Good day, everyone. Today, I want to challenge a mindset that many of us were taught. The idea that we must simply look for a job rather than discovering our God-given purpose. If we truly listen to God, we will understand that He never created us just to work for survival. He created us to walk in our calling and contribute to His kingdom. Work is an essential part of human life, but it is more than just a means of earning a living. From the very beginning, God designed work to be a purposeful and fulfilling aspect of our existence. When we look at the Bible, we see that work was established before sin entered the world. In Genesis 2:15, God placed Adam in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. This shows that work was not a punishment, but a divine assignment. It was meant to be a way for humanity to steward creation, develop their abilities, and participate in God's plan for the world. Many people today view work as something they must do to survive. They chase jobs only for financial security, often feeling drained and unfulfilled. However, this mindset is incomplete. God did not create us simply to labor for wages. He created us to contribute, to build, and to reflect His glory through the work we do. Proverbs 16:3 states, "Commit your work to the Lord and your plans will be established." This means that work should not be seen as separate from faith, but as a way to honor God. When we align our work with God's vision, we begin to see it as a calling rather than a burden. A job may change, but a calling is something deeper. It is the reason God created us with specific skills, talents, and passions. Whether someone is a teacher, a builder, a doctor, or an artist, their work has value when done with excellence and integrity. Colossians 3:23 reminds us, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters." This means that even in difficult or seemingly small jobs, we are serving a higher purpose when we approach our work with the right attitude. Another important aspect of God's vision for work is that it is meant to be a blessing, not a curse. While sin brought struggles into labor, Genesis 3:17 and 19, God still desires for us to find joy and fulfillment in our efforts. Ecclesiastes 3:13 says that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. This verse reminds us that work should not only provide for our needs, but also bring a sense of accomplishment and purpose. God's vision for work also includes service to others. Jesus Himself worked as a carpenter before beginning His ministry, demonstrating that labor is honorable. In Matthew 20:28, He said, "The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve." Our work should reflect this same attitude of service, seeking not just personal gain, but also the betterment of others. When we work with integrity, diligence, and a heart for God, we become lights in the world, using our labor as a testimony of His goodness. Ultimately, work is not just about making a living, it is about making a difference. When we see work through God's eyes, we find meaning, purpose, and the joy of knowing that we are part of His greater plan. Many people spend their lives chasing jobs, believing that employment alone will bring them security and fulfillment. However, there is a significant difference between having a job and discovering one's purpose. A job is simply a position where a person works to earn money, while a purpose is a deeper calling that aligns with one's God-given talents and destiny. Understanding this difference can transform the way we approach work in life. A job is often temporary. People move from one job to another based on financial needs, career growth, or changing circumstances. It provides income, stability, and sometimes professional development, but it may not necessarily bring deep fulfillment. Many people wake up every morning dreading their jobs because they feel stuck in something that does not excite or inspire them. They work only for a paycheck, and once they receive their salary, they count the days until they have to go back and do it all over again. This cycle leads to frustration and burnout as work becomes a means of survival rather than a source of purpose. Purpose, on the other hand, is the reason a person was created. It is not just about earning a living, but about making a meaningful impact. When someone finds their purpose, their work feels rewarding even when challenges arise. They are motivated by something greater than a paycheck. Their work becomes an extension of their faith, values, and passions. Proverbs 19:21 says, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." This means that while we may seek jobs for different reasons, true fulfillment comes only when we align with God's purpose for our lives. A key difference between a job and a purpose is that a job is assigned by an employer, but a purpose is given by God. A job has specific responsibilities defined by a company or organization, but a purpose is broader. It is a calling that affects every area of life. Some people find purpose within their jobs, while others may need to step out of their comfort zones to pursue what God has placed in their hearts. For example, someone working as a teacher might see it as just a job, but another teacher might view it as their purpose to educate and inspire the next generation. The difference is perspective and calling. Another distinction is that jobs can change, but purpose remains constant. People get hired, fired, promoted, and transferred, but their true calling does not change. When someone understands their purpose, they are not easily shaken by job loss or career shifts. They know that their identity and value are not tied to a specific job title, but to their God-given mission. Ultimately, a job is what a person does, but a purpose is who they are. When people focus only on finding a job, they may settle for anything that provides financial security. But when they seek God's purpose, they experience true fulfillment, knowing that their work is part of something much greater than themselves. Work and provision are central themes in the Bible, showing us that God has designed work as a means of both purpose and sustenance. Many people struggle with the balance between trusting God for provision and taking action in their work. However, the Bible provides wisdom on how we should approach labor, wealth, and reliance on God. Understanding biblical principles about work and provision helps us develop a mindset that honors God while ensuring we are productive and responsible. One key biblical principle is that work is not a punishment but a divine assignment. Before sin entered the world, God placed Adam in the Garden of Eden to cultivate and care for it, Genesis 2:15. This shows that work was always part of God's plan, not a curse. However, after sin, work became difficult, Genesis 3:17 and 19, and labor required effort and endurance. Even so, the Bible makes it clear that diligent work leads to Proverbs 14:23 states, "All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty." This verse highlights the importance of effort and responsibility in securing our needs. At the same time, the Bible warns against laziness. Proverbs 11 encourages us to observe the ant, which works diligently to store food for the future. In contrast, laziness leads to lack and hardship. 2 Thessalonians 3:10 reinforces this by stating, "The one who is unwilling to work shall not eat." God expects his people to be active and diligent, using their talents and skills to be productive. However, he also reminds us that provision does not come from work alone. It ultimately comes from him. While the Bible emphasizes hard work, it also teaches that we must not become obsessed with money or rely solely on our efforts. In Matthew 6:25-33, Jesus tells his followers not to worry about food, clothing, or shelter because God knows their needs and will provide. He uses the example of the birds of the air and the flowers of the field, which do not labor yet are cared for by God. This passage teaches that while we must work, we should not become anxious or place our trust in material wealth. Instead, we should seek first the kingdom of God, and everything we need will be given to us. Another important principle is the idea of stewardship. Everything we have belongs to God, and we are called to manage our resources wisely. Proverbs 3:9-10 instructs, "Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing." This shows that when we put God first, he blesses our efforts. Tithing, generosity, and financial wisdom are all ways we honor God with our provision. In conclusion, the Bible teaches a balanced view of work and provision. We are to work diligently, trust God for our needs, avoid laziness, and manage our resources with wisdom. When we align our work with God's principles, we find both fulfillment and security, knowing that He is our ultimate provider. Every person is uniquely created by God with specific skills, talents, and a divine assignment. These gifts are not given by accident, but are part of God's greater plan for our lives. When people recognize and develop their God-given abilities, they move beyond merely working for survival and step into their true purpose. Understanding the connection between skills, talents, and divine assignment allows us to serve God and others effectively while finding fulfillment in our work. The Bible makes it clear that talents come from God. In Exodus 31, verse 1 and 6, God specifically gifted Bezalel and Aholiab with skills in craftsmanship to build the tabernacle. These were not just natural abilities, but divinely empowered skills for a sacred purpose. This shows that God equips people with the abilities necessary for the work He calls them to do. Similarly, in the parable of the talents, Matthew 25:14-30, Jesus teaches that God entrusts different abilities to different people, expecting them to use and multiply what they have been given. Those who develop their talents are rewarded, while those who bury them out of fear or laziness lose what they have. Skills and talents are not just for personal success, but for serving others and glorifying God. 1 Peter 4:10 states, "Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms." This means that talents are not meant to be hidden or used selfishly. They are tools for fulfilling our divine assignment. A person with a gift for teaching, for example, is not meant to keep that knowledge to themselves, but to educate and uplift others. Someone with a talent for leadership is called to guide and inspire people toward a greater purpose. Discovering one's divine assignment requires prayer, reflection, and active engagement. Many people struggle to find their purpose because they focus only on job titles rather than the bigger picture of how their skills can be used in God's plan. Proverbs 22:29 says, "Do you see someone skilled in their work? They will serve before kings. They will not serve before obscure men." This verse highlights the importance of excellence and dedication. When people refine their skills and use them with integrity, they often find doors opening to greater opportunities. A divine assignment is more than just a career. It is the unique way a person is meant to impact the world. Some people may be called to ministry, others to business, healthcare, education, or creative fields. No matter the industry, when work is done with a heart aligned to God, it becomes an act of worship. Colossians 3:23 reminds us, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters." This means that every skill, whether in technology, music, communication, or craftsmanship, can be used to fulfill a higher purpose. Ultimately, skills and talents are gifts entrusted to us by God. When we develop them and use them according to His plan, we not only find personal fulfillment, but also contribute to something far greater, His kingdom. Faith and action must work together for a person to fully walk in their God-given purpose. Many people misunderstand faith, believing it means waiting passively for God to open doors without taking any steps themselves. Others rely too much on their own strength, working tirelessly but forgetting to trust in God. However, the Bible teaches that true faith requires action, and meaningful action must be guided by faith. Balancing both is key to living a life of purpose, provision, and divine fulfillment. The book of James makes one of the strongest statements about the relationship between faith and action. James 2:26 declares, "Faith without works is dead." This means that simply believing in God's promises is not enough. We must act on that belief. A farmer does not just pray for a harvest. He plants seeds, waters the soil, and works diligently, trusting that God will bring the increase. In the same way, faith should inspire action. When people step out in faith, God meets them in their efforts and provides the resources, guidance, and opportunities they need. Biblical examples show how faith and action go hand in hand. In Joshua 3, when the Israelites needed to cross the Jordan River, God did not part the waters immediately. Instead, he instructed the priests to step into the water first, and only then did the river stop flowing. This demonstrates that sometimes God waits for us to take a step before he reveals his provision. If we hesitate, waiting for absolute certainty before acting, we may miss divine opportunities. At the same time, action without faith can lead to burnout and frustration. Proverbs 3:5-6 instructs, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." This means that while we work hard and take initiative, we must do so with a heart that trusts God, rather than relying only on our strength. People who try to control everything often experience stress and anxiety because they do not surrender their plans to God. Balancing faith and action means praying and preparing, trusting and moving, believing and moving forward. For example, someone seeking a job should pray for guidance, but also take practical steps, learning new skills, applying for positions, and networking. A person with a business vision should seek God's wisdom, but also create plans, take risks, and put in effort. The key is to move in obedience without fear, knowing that God blesses both faith and diligence. Ultimately, faith and action work best when they are aligned with God's will. When we trust God and take steps forward, he directs our paths and provides what we need. Ecclesiastes 11:04 warns, "Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap." In other words, waiting for the perfect moment or absolute certainty can lead to inaction. Faith requires movement. And when we act in obedience, God multiplies our efforts for his glory.